Hello, neighbors. As most of you know, I focus on policy and analysis with the primary goal of keeping you informed and putting my views on the record. I cite all my sources and I avoid calling out private citizens. Compare this with my opponent's habit of releasing citizens' emails to social media. I have even ignored the constant lies and slander from my opponent as I maintain my focus on issues and policy. It's also just so ridiculous that it seems kind of pointless to respond. My opponent has literally said I wanted to turn off the water in our town, which is an interesting take given I have actively been calling out City Council's failures to address our water needs, and my neighborhood is one of the ones directly affected. You can watch the video and see for yourself, then review all the sources and references. But now my opponent, Heidi Henkel, has apparently managed to steal back her phone from her handlers and is using that as an opportunity to go right back to social media and attack her constituents. Amazingly, as part of this, she is actively bringing up things about herself that I have been going out of my way to avoid talking about. But okay, I don't want to, but let's address it. And we'll switch to my normal format to make it easier to show references. Something she certainly can't do. Councilmember Henkel is attacking another candidate for having bikini pictures on her social media and complaining that residents don't like it when my opponent puts out pictures of herself in a one-piece bathing suit. Obvious lies, given that there is strong evidence my opponent doesn't like to wear bathing suits and overwhelming evidence she very much likes to put out naked hot tub pictures. She and her family then celebrate and pile on to the sexual harassment of a single mother being photoshopped into these pictures against her will. To be clear, do whatever you want. I don't care if you like to post nude pictures of yourself. I am against the lies, hypocrisy, and sexual harassment. My opponent also likes to criticize my work over the last few years. She sure likes to talk about how successful she is in real estate, but then claims I brag about traveling and making money during the pandemic while she bravely hid in her home and bullied her neighbors online. Now, that is obviously untrue since I really don't like to talk about the last few years, and I have only briefly mentioned the absolute heartbreak of watching people die when medical capacity collapsed. I traveled more than 80% of the time for work. And unfortunately, for the last few years, the pandemic kept me pretty busy. The virus gets all the headlines, but there was a lot else that was broken. I had hospitals that couldn't get the basic supplies needed to do blood draws, so they couldn't do anything else. And for the first time in decades, cancer mortality increased. That stings. That's an area that I'd been working in all my life. Even worse, at the same time that medical capacity was desperately needed, hospitals were instead permanently going out of business. Even if you are like my opponent and don't understand how anything works, I don't see how you would interpret that as making money. In fact, everyone I worked with, myself included, got hit with pay cuts right at the beginning of the pandemic, but kept working because we were essential employees and lives depended on our work. Which is also why I was traveling, even when it was horrendously risky to do so. It seems my opponent is thinking my travel is like when she spends your money to go play around in Washington, D.C. Even before the pandemic, my travel was not fun, and part of the reason I had to downshift to a job with less travel is that I just couldn't stand being away from my family and my home anymore. Yeah, I have a family. I don't talk about it much because I don't want them dragged through the muck that our local politics has become. Unlike my opponent, I refuse to use the people I love as props and puppets. So I'm furious that in her latest unhinged rant, she attacks me for being grateful to my neighbors, helping my family while I was away. No, they didn't close the garage door, you contemptible fraud. They literally tore away rubble so my fiancé could make it out to see patients that depended on her. And they made sure my home was protected while there was a gaping hole in it. In other unhinged rants, she is calling out residents for things they simply haven't done, and directly referencing how she harassed people that signed the recall. No surprise, so many people that supported the recall were afraid to actually sign the petition. And yet, despite that, 1,300 still did. Almost a third of the number of people that voted in the last Ward 5 election. Republicans, Democrats, third parties, and independents. I guess in that way, at least, she unites us all. Again, for the record, and it's on the record, and my opponent very well knows this, I am a lifelong independent despite my opponent's claims otherwise. But back to the recall. Thank you all for stepping up. Get me in office and you won't have to worry about being harassed anymore. Or at least not by an elected official abusing her position. She'll just be a private citizen when she is supporting homophobic cyberbullying online. But let's slow down. I see my opponent did put out one video. Maybe we'll finally get something about policy or issues. I guess not. And yeah, that's her. I had to double check because it certainly doesn't look like her, but I guess she even lies in a video where she doesn't say a word. I'm not sure how to respond to that. And I guess we still get nothing on policy or anything else. Just personal attacks and self serving lies. My opponent and her supporters do seem to lose their minds that I am not on social media trumpeting how great I am or how many boards I serve on. Well, I know my opponent likes to slander churches and then watch them get vandalized, but I actually think there's quite a bit of wisdom in most of the various religions. I've always particularly liked this bit. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. It's good advice. She should consider it. I have mentored hundreds of people and am active in supporting STEM in education. I've also supported many other things, but frankly, I feel no pressure to discuss them. I am running on common sense, and my policy analysis speaks for itself. And let's reiterate, every job I've had has been dedicated to saving lives one way or another. But we know my opponent doesn't respect that. She's already disrespected our police and now our healthcare workers. So I guess watch out, fire department. You might be next. And one last thing. Don't forget her direct violations of your First Amendment rights. We have been sent additional direct records of her actively censoring political speech. Expect an update on that soon. Honestly, this is all gross and this is embarrassing. Our town deserves better. We deserve better. If you think you deserve better as well, remember to vote in November.